to our study of the Apocalypse, and I'm your host, Natalie King, here to help you keep the moon beneath your feet in this dark world. And we are at chapter 15. Let's begin reading. And I saw in heaven another great and marvelous sign. Well, last time we read that was in chapter 12 and verse 1 with the dragon. So this is connecting the passages there. And he says, 7 angels with the 7 last plagues. Now, last does not mean last in chronological order. Last means last in the sense of completion and fulfillment. He even says last because with them, God's wrath is completed. So if you recall, when the trumpets were blown, that each judgment was only a third. A third of the grass was burned up, a third of the sea was polluted, whatever, it's only a third. So this completes the wrath of God. So it's speaking of completion. Number 2, verse 2, and I saw what looked like a sea of glass mixed with fire. So remember I said that in the Apocalypse, everything about the sea has to do with cosmic evil. It's the abyss is in the sea. The beast comes up out of the abyss. The fallen angel in chapter 9 has the key to the abyss, and out of the abyss comes this army of locusts, demonic spirits. So the sea represents cosmic evil. That this is a glass sea is suggestive that God has stilled or defeated all cosmic evil. It is a glass sea. It is mixed with fire. Fire suggests the purification of the saints. They've been purified through tribulation. And standing beside the sea of glass are those who have been victorious over the beast, over his image, and over the number of his name. There's a triadic victory there. Over the beast, over his image, and that it's the image, it stands in kind of contrast with we were made in the image of God. So the image of God, the beast has set up his own image, remember. Now also recall this is echoing Exodus, big time. You know, what happened after they defeated the Pharaoh and his army? They stood by the sea and they sung a song. So this says, who were victorious over the beast and over his image and over the number of his name. They held harps given them by God, and they sang the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb. So this is going back to, this is echoing the Exodus, where they celebrated beside the sea. Miriam grabbed a tambourine, and they sung a song about God and his victory over the enemy. So they're given harps. There's 2 things on the harps. One is, it's also playing off of the whore of Babylon again, because her defeat, her demise, in chapter 18, it says that no harp will ever be heard in her again. But here in heaven, there's rejoicing and celebration with a harp. And these harps are given them by God. This is setting the stage for a beautiful liturgical worship service. And this is interesting that it's right when the bowls are about to pour out, which gives us a heavenly perspective of divine judgment. And he says, great and marvelous are your deeds, Lord God Almighty. So they're celebrating the greatness of God. Now, consider in the book of Revelation, everything is called great. It's a lot. God's never called great. He's called Almighty. But his deeds are worshipped as great. Well, the whore of Babylon is called great. The beast that came out of the sea made great boast. The dragon was called great, a great, enormous dragon. So these are all pretenders to the throne. They are challenging God with pseudo-greatness. You know, they're not really great. God doesn't have to pronounce himself as great. He never declares himself great, yet the whore ascribes the title great. You know, he doesn't need to because he's almighty. Okay, so there's no pretension to his throne. He is great. The Lord God Almighty, just and true are your ways. So what is being celebrated is God's righteousness and his justice. He is just in these judgments. And what is about to be poured out is done in according to his holiness and his righteousness. King of the ages, Who will not fear you, O Lord, and bring glory to your name? Well, we see who doesn't fear him. It's those who are the earth dwellers. And it says, for you alone are holy. All nations will come and worship before you, for your righteous acts have been revealed. Verse 5, after this I looked, and in heaven the temple, that is the tabernacle of his testimony, was open. So this is speaking about the Ark of the Covenant. Now this is not literal. The Ark of the Covenant has not been raptured. I literally heard somebody teach that one time. That is not what this is saying. It's playing off of the temple imagery. We're in a liturgical service, so it's appropriate. And it is the idea is that the curtain has been opened up and pulled back. And now they can see within the ark, and the ark has been opened up, the Ark of the Covenant. And what was in the Ark of the Covenant? The Ten Commandments. So it's as though the Ten Commandments have been exposed and mankind is found guilty. And those that escape are because of the blood of the Lamb. So it's showing God's justice in judging the earth. That it's the temple puts us within a holy framework. The awesomeness of God. Verse 6, out of the temple came 7 angels. That these 7 angels are coming out of the temple is suggestive of what they are about to perform is a sacred task. And the 7 angels with the 7 plagues. They were dressed in clean linen, clean shining linen, and wore gold sashes around their chest. This is suggestive of their purity. Verse 7. So we have a liturgical service happening. Okay, there's got worship going on. We've got these 7 angels coming out with plagues. Then it says in verse 7, then one of the 4 living creatures gave to the 7 angels 7 golden bowls. That these 4 living creatures are giving the angels the bowls is suggestive of all of creation welcoming redemption. Didn't Paul say that? Paul said all of creation groans in anticipation for redemption. So the 7 living creatures represent creation participating in redemption. They give them the 7 golden bowls filled with the wrath of God. Bowls were used in the temple service. They were used to take the ashes out of from the burnt offering place, to take the ashes out and to discard them. That's what the bowls were used for. So this is a worship service. These bowls, however, are filled with the wrath of God, who lives forever and ever. So it speaks of the eternality of God. And the temple was filled with smoke and the glory of God, and from his temple, was filled with smoke and the glory of God, and from his power, and no one could enter the temple until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were completed. Okay, this is echoing a couple of things. One, it is echoing the Day of Atonement. And let me go and read that to you real quick. On the Day of Atonement, it says, he is to take a censer full of burning coals from the altar before the Lord, and 2 handfuls of finely ground fragrant incense, and take them behind the curtain. He is to put the incense on the fire before the Lord, and the smoke of the incense will conceal the atonement cover above the testimony, so that he will not die. So here we've got the Ark of the Covenant is mentioned right here in Leviticus and here in this passage. So this is echoing the Day of Atonement. So in other words, those who have not received atonement are going to receive the wrath of God. It's also echoing Chronicles, where Solomon returned the temple. Or he built the temple, he brought the Ark of the Covenant into the temple, and they dedicated the temple. And it says in chapter 5 of 2 Chronicles, verse 13, the trumpets and the singers joined in unison in one voice to give praise and thanks to the Lord, accompanied by trumpets and cymbals and other instruments. They raised their voices in praise. I'm going to skip down. Then the temple of the Lord was filled with a cloud, and the priests could not perform their service because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord had filled the temple. Also, chapter 7 and verse 1 and 2. When Solomon finished praying, fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord filled the temple. The priests could not enter the temple of the Lord because the glory of the Lord had filled it. When all the Israelites saw the fire coming down from the glory and the glory of the Lord above the temple, they knelt on the pavement with their faces to the ground, and they worshipped and gave thanks to the Lord God. And let me read another passage dealing with the same context with the temple. And I think this one's really powerful. Chapter 6 and verse, 2 Chronicles 6 and verse 28. He says this, when famine, this was Solomon's prayer when he dedicated the temple. When famine or plague come to the land, or blight or mildew or locust or grasshoppers, or when enemies besiege them in any of the cities, whatever disaster or disease may come, and when a prayer or plea is made by any of your people Israel, each one aware of his afflictions and pain, and spreading out his hands towards this temple, then hear from heaven your dwelling place, forgive, and deal with mankind according to all that he does, since you know his heart. For you alone know the hearts of men, so that they will fear you and walk in your ways all the time they live in the land you gave their fathers. So it even says there, about fearing God. It just in the celebration up here, it said, "Who will not fear Him?" So this is a very strong echo to Solomon's dedication of the temple, where the Ark of the Covenant was brought in, and the glory of God came down and filled the temple. So that is why it says here in this passage in Revelation, no one could enter the temple except until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were completed. And it's speaking of the holy God, the awesomeness of His wrath. And hey, listen, I am here to help you keep the moon beneath your feet in this dark world. Thanks for listening. God bless.